Okay.
Less than 1 minute. Okay, streaming now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rania Jobber, and I'm the chair of NAL TESOL Conference 2022. It gives me great pleasure today to welcome Mr. Dean Blaine from York Press Sphinx. He's going to be giving our plenary to this afternoon. His title is The Egyptian Scholastic Test, Show the World You're Ready. Mr. Blaine has spent his career as a writer and educator. For years, he taught English as a second language, and he has written and edited English assessment tests for a number of publishers. He has specialized in helping students learn the proper use and pronunciation of American English, and is an expert in the fields of music, science, history, art, and literature. He has worked with ESL students ranging in age from 5 to 18 and taught English at all levels from beginner to advanced. Dean has also worked as a journalist in the United States, contributing travel articles and other stories to magazines, newspapers, and online outlets, including Norwegian Cruise Lines, Hyatt Hotels, and Booking.com. His work has taken him to more than 30 countries and 6 continents. He had the pleasure to visit Egypt in 2008 as a guest of the Egyptian Tourism Authority and was immediately enthralled by the people, the food, and the unmistakable ancient history. Dean resides in LA, California, and please join me in welcoming him to give our plenary speaker a speech this afternoon. Thank you very much. Please go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Rania, for that nice introduction. Yeah, as she mentioned, my name is Dean Blaine, and I want to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone around the world. I am currently in Los Angeles, where it's 6 a.m. here. It's bright and early in the morning. Yeah, I could tell you a bit about myself. I know Rania covered it. I started my career as a journalist. I used to write for a lot of the airline magazines. So as you've been flying around the world, maybe you've seen some of my work on the airline magazines. I did some memorable stories. I covered a celebrity impersonator convention in Las Vegas. That was a lot of fun, hanging out with people who look like different celebrities. I did a story on the Blue Man Group where I actually became a blue man. They covered my face with blue makeup and I had a bald wig on. That was a lot of fun. And I got to travel to Jamaica to do a story on the legend of James Bond. Yeah, and then as Rania mentioned, I was able to visit more than 30 countries on 6 continents, including amazing Egypt. I've now been teaching English as a second language and writing tests and editing tests for a number of publishers. I specialize in helping students learn the proper use and pronunciation of English, and especially American English. And American English, where we use the word herbs instead of herbs, which seems to drive a lot of people crazy around the world in other dialects. And what I say is I honestly don't know why we do that. Some of these different dialects, we say herbs instead of herbs. We make the H silent. But we don't when we say honestly. So honestly, I don't know why we do that. And yeah, I've worked with Booking.com, Norwegian Cruise Lines, Hyatt Hotels. So thank you for joining me for the session today. We're covering the Egyptian Scholastic Test, Show the World You're Ready, a more exciting and user-friendly alternative to standardized college entrance exams like the SAT and the ACT. The Egyptian Scholastic Test is designed to measure the skills and knowledge acquired by Egyptian students in the American education system in Egypt. It is a digitally administered exam that allows Egyptian students in the American education system to qualify for admissions to Egyptian higher education institutions. The purpose of the EST is to assess students against Common Core standards and measure students' basic scientific knowledge and reasoning skills required to enter university and succeed in academic life. EST measures the academic skill sets of every applicant, knowledge-based skills in math, reading, writing, language, and other specific matters, subject-specific matters, as well as analytical skills, critical thinking skills, and reasoning skills are measured to evaluate what students have learned in schools. There are two types of EST examinations available, the EST-1 and the EST-2. The EST-1 assesses language and math skills through 4 tests. All those tests are administered on the same day. The first is the Literacy Test 1. It assesses language usage. And then there's Literacy Test 2, which assesses reading comprehension. We have a math test that, of course, assesses mathematics proficiency. And finally, there is an optional essay writing section recommended for students who wish to pursue studies in linguistics or public relations. Overall, the EST-1 provides a comprehensive assessment of communication skills, comprehension skills, and critical and logical reasoning skills, all fundamental to university students. As I mentioned, we also have the EST-2. The EST-2 is a subject-based test in chemistry, biology, physics, and math both level 1 and level 2. These subject-based tests in chemistry, biology, physics, and math measure basic scientific knowledge, scientific reasoning, and higher order thinking skills. They assess the abilities of students planning to pursue education in specific majors related to engineering, science, and healthcare. These tests are each administered separately. Students must take the math test, either level 1 or level 2, and then they select one of the other tests, either chemistry, biology, or physics, based upon their planned field of study. For the purposes of today's presentation, however, I'm going to focus on the literary portions of EST-1. That would be the language usage, the reading comprehension, and the optional essay. And again, the optional tests for EST-2 are chemistry, biology, physics, and then math, level 1 and level 2. Allow me first to walk you through the process of how the test is put together. It's quite an extensive and careful process. The Egyptian Scholastic test is developed according to the highest academic standards. Authoring the test involves the expertise of several writers, editors, and reviewers, and a sequence of stages. Each stage in the process is informed by the stage before it, ensuring a relevant, comprehensive, and flawless test written and reviewed at various stages by a select team of experts. Each test begins with an outline. That outline is developed in response to specifications, is the most significant part of the test design. It is the backbone of the entire development process. A thorough procedure of writing, trialing, and modifications based upon feedback from the various members of the team. Developing high-quality test questions involves, number 1, understanding the subject matter and the objectives of the test, and ensuring that the testing items assess what they are intended to assess. This team effort ensures a fair, meaningful, and reliable method of student assessment. First, in the process, a team of authors sets the outline in reference to the specifications. They write the testing items in an answer key and a design matrix, linking the items to the defined outline. Next, these items are checked by internal validators who examine the correspondence between the set items and the design matrix. At this stage, the internal validators solve the set of items, check the answer key, and send detailed feedback to the author. The author reviews the feedback provided by the internal validators, makes revisions, and then sends an amended version back to the internal validator. The internal validator checks the revisions, applies any more necessary changes in reference to the clarifications. And then we have the second draft. Once the second draft is complete, we have another group of people ready to get involved. We have the subject editor, who prepares a document for the illustrators. The illustrators work on any needed supporting visual elements like graphs, pictures, and illustrations that provide an essential element requiring students to understand and interpret information presented graphically. Once illustrations are complete, we have the third draft. And the third draft gets checked again. Subject editors check the factual accuracy of the subject-specific text, both the text and illustrations. Next comes the most essential step, where external validators review the test in reference to the defined specifications, match the set of items with the distribution matrix, validate the answer key, review illustrations, and provide feedback. Throughout the test design process, test validators play a crucial role. Validators ensure that the test assesses the contents of the subject and the outcome set by other members of the team. They confirm that the type of assessment design fits the purpose of the test as a whole. Validators establish the internal and external validity of the design test. They ensure the strength of the test and justify its application. Then it goes back to the subject editors. They apply any needed modifications, and they generate a new final version of the test. The test is complete. Then we have the live version. Now let's go back to EST1 and the literary portion of EST1. The literary portion includes reading comprehension, language usage, and an optional essay. So there's 3 portions to the literary section. We assess the test through the CARS model, ensuring that all 4 levels of cognition are assessed. We know the CARS model begins with K for knowledge. So knowledge is assessed. A for application. Application is assessed. R for reasoning. Reasoning is assessed. And then synthesis is assessed during the optional essay. Let's go through each of these a little closer. Knowledge. Knowledge is defined as the ability to remember previously learned material and content. Although it represents the first and simplest level of cognition, knowledge is crucial to effectively execute high-order cognitive processes. The knowledge portion is assessed in about 20 to 25% of the content on the test. It requires simple skills or abilities. This may include a shallow understanding of text and often consist of verbatim recall from text or a simple understanding from a single word or phrase. Next, we have application. Application refers to the ability to use previously learned material in a new situation or to solve a new problem. Students have to address how, when, and where previously learned methods, ideas, and theories can be used. Application is assessed in 40 to 50% of the content and makes up about 40 to 50% of the content of the test. It requires the engagement of mental processes beyond recalling or reproducing a response. Items assessing application require both comprehension and subsequent processing of content, which may include tasks that involve analysis, evaluation, inference, interpretation, and organization. After A is R for reasoning. Reasoning is the ability to critically think about a specified premise in order to reach a supported conclusion or a judgment. For reasoning, students are required to analyze information, evaluate information, solve a problem, process information, and think creatively. Reasoning, which requires planning, identifying abstract themes, making inferences across an entire passage, applying prior knowledge, and or explaining, generalizing, or connecting ideas. Reasoning is assessed by about 20 to 25% of the exam. These items may involve developing a plan or sequence of steps, complex text, or citing evidence to support an idea. So we have K, A, R, and then S. S is for synthesis. Synthesis refers to a student's ability to integrate different ideas, concepts, and information to form a new, unique whole. Through planning, organizing, relating, creating, arranging, and revising, students combine all the information they have to come up with the correct answer in a given context. Synthesis, as I mentioned, is assessed in the essay portion of the test, which requires the highest level of mental processing, and that's the entire focus of the essay portion. Students must produce an extended analytical response, determine the details of what is explicitly stated, and make logical inferences, write clearly, and demonstrate sufficient command of standard English conventions. The essay score is based 100% on this synthesis. The question types of EST1, the language usage portion that we discussed is made up of multiple choice questions. The reading portion is also made up of multiple choice questions. And the essay is the essay, extended response. Multiple choice questions are comprised of a stem and a set of options. After reading the stem, students are expected to carefully read the given options and choose the single best answer. With the use of well-designed multiple choice questions, students are objectively assessed over a broad range of questions that cover a wide scope of competencies. The essay portion of the test is composed of one extended response question. Extended response questions are open-ended questions that require students to respond in writing to a given prompt. This type of question gives students the chance to express themselves using a unique set of skills that clearly reflect their interpretation and understanding of a given topic or argument. When responding to an extended response question, students are expected to demonstrate the extent of their ability to use standard conventions of the English language. So as I said, we have in the EST1, the literary portions comprised of language usage, reading comprehension, and essay writing. In the language usage test, students are asked to review a passage and then choose the correct revision that will improve it, grammatically and structurally. Grammatical skills, analytical skills, writing skills, and editorial skills are tested in this section. This portion allows students to demonstrate their command of the conventions of standard English grammar and usage. In the language usage portion, students must demonstrate the ability to edit and revise text from various disciplines, demonstrate the ability to revise the effectiveness and strength of ideas, the coherence and cohesion of ideas, the logical sequence of information, the uniformity of style, and the compatibility of style, word choice, and tone within the purpose of the text. They must demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English grammar and usage. Demonstrate the ability to edit sentences in terms of subject-verb agreement, noun agreement, pronoun clarity, shifts in pronouns, misplaced modifiers, faulty parallelism, and verb tense. They must demonstrate command of the conventions of standard rules of English punctuation, spelling, and capitalization, and demonstrate the ability to revise sentences in terms of sentence formation, the use of frequently confused words, errors in punctuation at the end and middle of a sentence, unnecessary use of punctuation, and the use of coordinating and subordinating conjunctions. The next portion is the reading comprehension portion. In this portion, students must read and interpret a variety of texts from various disciplines and identify the overall purpose of the text. They must determine central ideas or themes of the text, demonstrate the ability to deduce information from the text and justify choice, determine different ways in which ideas and text can be presented, identify explicit ideas mentioned in the text, identify an appropriate summary for a paragraph or entire passage, analyze how two or more texts address similar themes or topics, determine the meaning of new vocabulary words using contextual clues, determine the connotative and figurative meanings of words or phrases from context, determine how a text is structured, determine the role of a line or paragraph within a passage, Interpret the meaning of certain lines or paragraphs within a text. Analyze how events and ideas develop. Identify the author's purpose, point of view, tone, mood, and opinion. Interpret the effect of word choice on the overall purpose of a text. Determine the relationship between the author's perspective and the choice of words and literary elements used. Determine and evaluate the sufficiency and validity of the evidences used to support the discussed argument. Interpret graphical data and relate its information to the text. The next portion, of course, is the essay writing that we mentioned. In the essay writing, students must produce an extended analytical response to a given text. They must demonstrate a comprehensive understanding of the original text, demonstrate the ability to analyze the argument and present it in the source text, demonstrate a clear understanding of the relation between major ideas and supporting details as presented in the source text, demonstrate a clear understanding of the evidences used by the author and evaluate their validity in supporting the author's argument. Produce an extended analytic response where the writer produces an accurate, specific claim and introduces the ideas clearly. Provide sufficient and relevant supporting ideas. Present the ideas in a logical and persuasive manner. Maintain the cohesion of their ideas and the coherence of their writing. Choose a suitable tone and style. Develop the ideas or claims thoroughly with well-chosen examples, facts, or details from the source text. Demonstrate the ability to integrate evidences from the source text into their response. Demonstrate the ability to paraphrase and quote information. And of course, write clearly and demonstrate sufficient command of the conventions of standard written English. Here's an example of the instructions that students receive for the essay. They're instructed to read the passage and think about the evidence, reasoning, and rhetoric that's used in the passage. Then they're instructed to write a response that demonstrates how the author makes an argument for the importance of being exposed to fine arts and its different advantages. So that's one specific passage that's on fine arts. And this is what it looks like. This is what they would read on the test. This looks like 5 substantial long paragraphs about the author's opinion on the fine arts. The essays are graded using comprehension, interpretation, and composition. The essay is evaluated by 3 different raters. So 3 raters will separately read the essay and score it. And then the score is calculated from the median score of all 3 raters. Each rater will evaluate and assess how well students' essays demonstrate skills in the following 3 analytic dimensions. As we mentioned, comprehension, interpretation, and composition. The comprehension category assesses a student's ability to read a text and understand its main ideas and details. Students are expected to read the source text objectively and focus on how the author's argument is presented instead of concentrating on whether or not they agree with the author. The student is assessed in his or her ability to relate different ideas and details from the source text and use them effectively in their written analytical response as evidence. The essays are scored with a score of 0 to 3. So 0 being the best, 0 being the least effective essay, and 3 being the best effective essay. So a score of 0, as an example, would exhibit a total lack of comprehension of the text. It would show no interrelation of ideas and misapprehends the main idea of the source text and makes no use of evidence from the source text to support their understanding. And then an example of a very successful score of 3, the highest score in comprehension, the student would demonstrate thorough knowledge, thorough understanding of the source text free from misunderstandings. They would interpret the source text and demonstrate understanding of main ideas in relation to the details and their interrelation. The essay exhibits competence in using contextual evidence from the source text in both forms, quotations, and paraphrases. The second grading category is interpretation. This assesses a student's ability to choose proper analytical evidence from the source text to support his or her argument. The student is assessed on the scope of the interpretation and the explanation of the evidence to support his or her analytical response. A precise interpretation shows that the student has understood the author's argument, is able to evaluate the methods used by the author to tackle the argument, and is able to use these methods to support his or her own writing. Again, the students are graded between 0 and 3, 0 being the lowest score and 3 being the highest score. An example of the lowest score would be whether the essay exhibits no or little comprehension of the analytical task, demonstrates no or little evaluation of the author's style, tone, reasoning, use of evidence, and compelling components, fails to use support from the text or attempts to, but is either off topic or the evidence is inapplicable. The highest score of 3 provides an above standard or insightful reading of the analytical task, shows an in-depth perceptive evaluation of the author's style, tone, reasoning, use of evidence, and compelling components while carefully stressing their importance within the source text and connections made to the overall analysis of the main ideas and/or details. A score of 3 would also choose evidence that specifically relates to the analytical response and places analytical evidence appropriately within the analysis of the text. Finally, the essays are graded in terms of composition. The composition category assesses a student's ability to write a well-developed response with clear paragraphing and a central claim. It assesses the student's progressions of ideas, use of grammatical conventions, and appropriate word choice. Through writing, the student is expected to show how well the source text is understood and how it is used as the foundation for a legible discussion. Again, they're graded from 0 to 3. The lowest score would lack a proper introduction. Thesis statement is either missing or insufficient. Shows no understanding of organization or paragraphing. Diction is inappropriate and does not relate to the source text or the central claim. Style and tone are inconsistent throughout the response. Contains many errors in punctuation, sentence structure, and tenses that affect comprehension of the response. The highest score makes a clear central claim with a definite thesis statement in the introductory paragraph, establishes coherence through effective organization, including appropriate paragraphing and cohesive progression. Uses effective and appropriate diction that relates to the central claim of the source text. Applies a consistent and proper style and tone throughout the response. Exhibits proper use of tenses and punctuation, and an overall excellent command of conventions with little or no mistakes. Now we'll look at language usage and talk about how that is assessed in the EST1. Language usage test items can be classified into 6 categories. These categories assess development, organization, effective language use, sentence structure, conventions of use, and conventions of punctuation. Let's break each of these down quickly into some of their various subcategories. Let's look at development first. Items that assess development focus on revising text in relation to rhetorical purpose. Prior knowledge of the topic is not assessed, though consistency of material within a passage may be. These items of development are divided into 4 subcategories: proposition, support, focus, and quantitative information. As we go through these subcategories, you can see an example of the type of question that would appear in the exam that covers this subcategory. You can see here the question for proposition asks, which choice provides the most logical introduction to the sentence? We don't have the sentence, but you can see the choices the student would have. In this subcategory, the student will add, revise, or retain central ideas, main claims, counterclaims, topic sentences, and the like to structure text and convey arguments, information, and ideas clearly and effectively. The next subcategory is support. The student will add, revise, or retain information and ideas like details, facts, statistics, intended to support claims or points in the text. Focus. The student will add, revise, retain, or delete information and ideas in text for the sake of relevance of topic and purpose, what belongs and what doesn't. Quantitative information. The student will relate information presented quantitatively in such forms as graphs, charts, and tables to information presented in the text. Now we look at organization, the next category of testing, of assessment. This is broken down into two subcategories. It assesses the organization to focus on revision of text to improve the logic and cohesion of text at the sentence, paragraph, and whole text levels. This is broken down into logical sequence. Let's see. And introductions, conclusions, and transitions. Logical sequence, the student will revise text as needed to ensure that information and ideas are presented in the most logical order. Introductions, conclusions, and transitions. The student will revise text as needed to improve the beginning or ending of a text or paragraph and ensure that the transition words, phrases, and sentences are used effectively to connect information and ideas. Next, we'll look at the effective language use. These focus on revision of text to improve the use of language to accomplish a rhetorical purpose. Effective language use is divided into four subcategories: precision, concision, style and tone, and syntax. Here's an example of a precision question. With precision, the student will revise text as needed to improve the exactness or content appropriateness of word choice. Concision. The student will revise text as needed to improve the economy of word choice. Basically, eliminate wordiness and redundancy. Style and tone. In this subcategory, the student will revise text as necessary to ensure consistency of style and tone within a text or to improve the match of style and tone to purpose. Syntax. The student will use various sentence structures to accomplish needed rhetorical purpose. Next, we'll look at sentence structure. How well did the students do at sentence structure? This focuses on editing text to ensure conformity to the conventions of standard written English sentence structure, usage, and punctuation. These items are divided into 5 subcategories: sentence boundaries, subordination and coordination, parallel structure, verb tense, mood, and voice, and pronoun, person, and number. First, we look at sentence boundaries. The student will recognize and correct grammatically incomplete sentences, rhetorically inappropriate fragments and run-ons. Subordination and coordination. In this subcategory, the student will recognize and correct problems in coordination and subordination. Parallel structure. The student will recognize and correct problems in parallel structure in the sentences. We see an example of that type of question there. Verb tense, mood, and voice. The student will recognize and correct inappropriate shifts in verb tense, voice, and mood within and between sentences. Pronoun, person, and number. The student will recognize and correct inappropriate shifts in pronoun, person, and number with and between sentences. Now we'll look at conventions of use. Items that can assess conventions of use on editing text to ensure conformity to the conventions of standard written English usage. These are divided into 6 subcategories that are assessed. Pronoun clarity. The student will recognize and correct pronouns with unclear or ambiguous antecedents and or recognize the correct lack of agreement between pronoun and antecedent. Possessive determiners. The student will recognize and correct cases in which possessive determiners, contractions, and adverbs are confused with each other. Subject-verb agreement. The student will recognize and correct lack of agreement before the subject and the verb. Noun agreement. Frequently confused words. The student will recognize and correct instances in which a word or phrase is confused with another. You see here they chose accepted instead of accepted. And logical comparison. Finally, we have conventions of punctuation. This focuses on editing text to ensure conformity to the conventions of standard written English punctuation. These items are divided into 6 categories assessing punctuation. End of sentence punctuation, within sentence punctuation, unnecessary punctuation, items in a series, and non-restrictive and parenthetical elements. Now we'll look at reading comprehension. So if we've assessed language usage, and now we're going to look at reading comprehension, which is the second part of the literacy test. Reading comprehension test items can be classified into 3 categories. These questions assess information and ideas, rhetoric, and synthesis. Information and ideas. These ideas focus on the informational context of text. These items are divided into 8 subcategories. We will first determine explicit meaning. The student will identify information and ideas explicitly stated in the text. The next subcategory is determining implicit meaning. The student will draw reasonable inferences and logical conclusions from the text. Number 3, using analogical reasoning. In this subcategory, the student will extrapolate in a reasonable way from the information and ideas in a text, or apply information and ideas in a text to a new analogous situation. Citing textual evidence. The student will cite the textual evidence that best supports a given claim or point. Determining central ideas and themes. The student will identify explicitly stated central ideas or themes in the text and determine implicit central ideas or themes from text. Summarizing. The student will identify a reasonable summary of a text or key information and ideas in text. Understanding relationships. The student will identify explicitly stated relationships or determine implicit relationships between and among individuals, events, or ideas. Interpreting words and phrases in context. The student will determine the meaning of words and phrases in context. You see an example of that type of question there. Next, we look at rhetoric in terms of reading comprehension. Items that assess rhetoric focus on the rhetorical analysis of a text, and these are divided into 8 subcategories. First, analyzing word choice. In this subcategory, the student will determine how the selection of specific words and phrases, or the use of patterns of words and phrases, shapes meaning and tone in text. Analyzing overall text structure. The student will describe the overall structure of a text. Analyzing part to whole relationships. The student will analyze the relationship between a particular part of a text, example, word, phrase, sentence, or paragraph, and the whole text. Analyzing point of view. In this subcategory, the student will determine the point of view or perspective from which a text is related or the influence this point of view or perspective has on content and style. Analyzing purpose. In this subcategory, the student will determine the main or most likely purpose of a text or a particular part of a text. Analyzing claims and counterclaims. The student will identify claims and counterclaims explicitly stated in text or determine implicit claims and counterclaims from the text. Assessing reasoning. The student will assess the author's reasoning for soundness. Analyzing evidence. In this subcategory, the student will assess how an author uses or fails to use evidence to support a claim or counterclaim. And then we get back to synthesis. Again, this is used to assess the reading comprehension. Items that assess synthesis focus on synthesizing multiple sources of information. And these items are divided into two categories: analyzing multiple texts and analyzing quantitative reasoning. Analyzing multiple texts. In this subcategory, the student will synthesize information and ideas from paired texts. And then they analyze quantitative reasoning. So we've gone through now the way in which EST 1, the literary portion, will be assessed. We covered language usage, reading comprehension, and then the essay. We need to cover, of course, the application process, and these are sort of the nuts and bolts of the test. All students planning to take the EST are asked to visit the official website as shown in the slides. For those of you who cannot see it, the website is est.moe.gov.eg, and follow the given steps to apply for the EST. Filling out the registration form, applicants are asked to provide personal information, upload required documents, select the type of test they desire, select the test location, and pay their fees. Once students fill in the required information, they are asked to upload a copy of their ID and a personal photo. Next, applicants have to select the type of EST test and their preferred test location. Upon selecting the test type and test center, students proceed to payment. After receiving payment, students will receive 2 emails. The first one is the EST registration confirmation. This will list all their personal and test information, and then the payment confirmation. This serves as a receipt for your payment. After registration closes, a list containing all paid applicants is exported from the website. Based on the number of applicants per district, test centers are selected by the Ministry of Education. A center is then assigned to each applicant, ideally located within his or her test district of choice. Assigned centers are then added manually to the user accounts at the website. Once all centers are assigned to user profiles, admission tickets are sent. This is what the admission ticket looks like. It contains the student's personal information and photo. It specifies what tests they are registered for, the time, date, and location of when and where the test will be administered, as well as important instructions. Some of those really important instructions that the students should keep in mind when they enter the test center to take the test. They should have a print copy of their admission ticket, as seen here. They should have a photo ID. They should report to the test center at least 45 minutes before the test starts. Applicants should bring their own mask and make sure to wear it at all times in the test center. No food or drinks except water are allowed in the testing room. All personal belongings and study materials should be kept outside the test room. Belongings should be limited to the necessities. No electronic devices are allowed in the testing room. No smartphones, tablets, headphones, smartwatches, etc. If registered for EST 1 or EST 2, Math 1 or Math 2, applicants should bring their own calculator. Scratch paper is provided, but applicants should bring their own pens. Failure to abide by any of these instructions could result in disqualifying the applicant from taking the test. The exam platform. The exams are given on tablets. The EST tests are delivered on a digital platform. After registration closes, unique passwords are generated for all paid applicants. The username is the student's email address. Each set of credentials grants access to the applicant to their specific test. On test day, each student is provided with their username and password for the day. The passwords differ between EST 1 and EST 2 to prevent students from remotely assessing the test on the second day using the same password. The students will receive communication and support from the EST. These email addresses are either test@egyptianscholastictest.com or registration@egyptianscholastictest.com. In addition to the mass mailings, applicants receive personalized answers to the hundreds of questions that they submit daily to the support and email accounts. A dedicated team answers all kinds of questions throughout the whole application process and examination process with the support of an ever-growing guide of template answers for frequently asked questions. Test marking. How are the tests graded in terms of points? Each question in the literary test is assigned 1 point. Each of those multiple choice questions is assigned 1 point. Students will earn 1 point for every correct answer. No point is subtracted if the question is not answered or if the answer is incorrect. Students should try their best to read, understand, and choose or provide the correct answers. Remember, there is no point taken away for an incorrect answer. For the EST1, the total score students receive is a combination of their scores on the literacy test and the math test. Students also receive a subscore that tells their scores for each separate section of EST1 test. As for the EST2, 1 score is given for each subject test. So we see the score range for literacy is 200 to 800, math 200 to 800, and essay is 2 to 8. A student's raw score, which is the score representing the number of questions answered correctly, is converted into scaled scores. Scaled scores are obtained by statistically converting raw scores into a standardized scale with the use of convention charts. The use of scaled scores allows for accurate comparison between all test takers and test versions. So these scaled scores are the 200 to 800 scores and the 2 to 8. The score reports. This is what the score reports look like. They follow the following procedure. As a literacy test are multiple choice, they are scored automatically from a raw score issued from the platform. Once the raw scores are received, they are scaled to the EST scale so that each subject is on a 200 point to 800 point scale. Unofficial student score reports are generated using a predefined template populated with the applicant's info and scores so that each of them has their own personalized copy. Student reports are then uploaded to the server and the students are notified of their scores by email with a unique link to download their copy in a PDF format. The email also includes a link to request the official score reports. Official score reports are printed and shipped to the Ministry of Education and Technical Education for certification. Students are then contacted and advised to collect their copies from locations indicated by the Ministry of Education and Technical Education. A copy of the scores is shared with the Supreme Council of Universities, which in turn communicates them to the universities. The validity and combining scores. Concerning this, applicants should know that the EST1 and EST2 scores are valid for up to 5 years after the test results. As for score combinations, applicants should know that scores from EST1 and EST2 from different sessions can be combined. Scores from different EST2 sessions can be combined. EST1 and EST1 English and EST1 Math are considered as one full test, and they cannot be combined from different sessions. Academic misconduct, of course. The EST board considers academic misconduct as a behavior that may result in the student attaining an unfair advantage or marks. Proctors undergo extensive training prior to test administration on the test platform and on administration procedures. They are equipped with the form, sheets, and registers to ensure consistency between different proctors in different testing rooms at different testing centers. Academic misconduct is not tolerated. So in conclusion, the Egyptian Scholastic test has succeeded in providing Egyptian students in the American education system a path to qualify for admission to Egyptian higher education institutions. It accurately assesses students' academic abilities against Common Core standards and measures students for foundational knowledge base and reasoning skills required to enter university and succeed in academic life. By targeting communication skills, comprehension skills, and critical and logical reasoning skills, the language usage, reading comprehension, and essay portion test are accurate indicators of a student's ability to succeed in higher education. Thank you for your attention today. It was nice to be online with you guys all over the world. We can open up to questions now if anybody has one. I'm going to check with my colleagues to see if there's any questions. I thank you for attending. And again, you can see that the website for the EST is est.moe.gov.eg. Let me see if we have any questions for me. Okay, let's see. Going over the questions here. I hope you guys can still see me. Someone is asking about the fees. Please check the website for the fees, and you can register for EST1 and sit for all the sections, Literature 1, Literature 2, Math with no calculator, and Math with calculator.
في الشات ويبعت، انت ما تشتغلش يعني تبعت بداله. لا طلب منك ليه؟ يبعت هو في الشات، هو كان يبعت يقدر في الشات، يبعت هو في الشات. I'm sorry, I'm moderating a session. هرجع لك بعدين.
Okay. Another question, could you please provide a raw score table for the practice test on the EST exam? Currently, we only report the scaled score to students. However, the EST board is discussing the possibility of sharing raw scores with the students in their reports. The EST board is discussing the possibility of providing more analytics for teachers and school management for each round. This would show the weaknesses and strengths of students. We have another question here. You can check the resources for teachers under the teacher resources section on the website. I hope this answers the questions. There's going to be another Q&A session with Joe and Miriam from EST. I think at some later point, you'll be able to address questions with them. So it looks like that's it for now. I thank you very much for your attention today and for attending. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dean. This is great. This is fantastic. It's an excellent session. And thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you for the team for basically answering most of the questions in the chat as they came along. This is a most interesting session. And I, as a person with much interest in assessment, I find this very, very fascinating. I've been here in Egypt. I didn't know all these details. This is most enlightening, most helpful, and most useful. Thank you very much, and looking forward to see you once again in our conference, and hopefully maybe face-to-face in Egypt next year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.